Hey, and welcome back to another video. This is the 14th episode of the story where there are so many things that we as humans are unaware of, or lack an understanding. The bijou are one of those things. Follow the journey of Naruto Uzumaki as he befriends the yokai that was sealed inside of him and, she, helps him grow stronger. Please support by liking and subscribing. Let's start the show. Naruto stood on the deck of a ship alongside all of the other genin, which they had been led to immediately after the end of the first test. While not as large as a cargo ship, the one they were on was still quite big, at least enough to contain the 78 genin who had passed the first exam. The ship rocked some. A few of the genin on board, those who came from a place that didn't have an ocean, looked green in the face. They were probably motion sick. It was quite common for people who'd never been on a ship until recently, though they wouldn't have felt so bad if they had taken the necessary precautions against motion sickness. Among the genin were three more people, two chunin dressed as Hunternin and Utakata. He stood at the helm, in front of the driver, staring down at all of the genin with his arms crossed and a stern expression on his face. He was still leaking a steady amount of killing intent. Naruto guessed he wanted all of the genin to be nervous so he could see how well they did under pressure. Because of the thick fog that surrounded them, Naruto couldn't see very far, but he was used to that. This place wasn't called the Hidden Mist Village for nothing. We've almost reached our destination, Utakata said. However, before we arrive, there are some things that I need to explain to you. This next test is going to last a total of 5 days. It will be taking place on an island that we have cordoned off as a restricted island due to its inhabitants. This island is home to many ferocious monsters that could easily kill a genin if they aren't careful. I suggest you all proceed with caution. Those words caused a number of genin to pale, though a few, like Sasuke, displayed only the utmost confidence, or perhaps even arrogance. Of course, there were also those who didn't seem to care one way or the other. Niji was standing around with a composed demeanor, arms crossed and posture relaxed. The ninja from Kyumo, Samui, Karui, and the male who Naruto didn't know the name of, were a mixed bag between the three. Samui seemed calm, while Karui was anxious. The boy wore an expression that was a combination of the two. Naruto didn't feel much of anything yet. This test sounded like it could be fun, but he didn't know the details. He would reserve judgment. The goal of this test is to claim 3 of those numbered cards that you received during test 1. The words caused the genin to stir. Utakata smirked as realization set into the eyes of the young ninja surrounding him. That's right. Those of you who got 2 cards have a leg up on those who only have 1. All of you will be staying in this island for the total 5 days. At the end of the 5-day period, we will return to pick you up. Those who have 3 cards will pass, while those who have 2, 1, or no cards will fail. Naruto understood how Utakata could be so confident when he proclaimed that more than half of them would fail. If there were 26 teams, some of which had 2 cards and some of which only had 1 card, then the number of teams that could win was limited to a small amount. Assuming that only half the teams had 2 cards, it meant that there were a total of 38 cards. Naruto wasn't good at math, so he didn't know the exact calculation, but this meant only about half of the teams present could win. Maybe even less. It wasn't long after Utakata's speech that they reached their destination. It was an island. Naruto wondered if they hadn't always been there, floating off the coast as they waited for Utakata to finish telling them how this would work. He couldn't see much of the island. A lot of it was covered in a fog so thick it made seeing even 10 meters hard. What little he did see were trees so large and gnarled they looked more like writhing tentacles. Gnarly trees twisted around each other, looping and curving in patterns that defied geometry. Not even the forest of death looked this mashed up and strange. There was a part where the tree liane stopped to make way for the beachhead. White sand marked this zone, which mixed with the blue water. This is where you brats will be getting off, Utakata said. He received several "hus" in response, but then Utakata and the two ninja with him leapt into the air, flipped around, and landed on the mast. They stuck themselves there with chakra. Naruto had only a moment to question this action before the floor beneath them was suddenly launched upward. Several screams echoed all around him, Akane, and Haku. Sighing as he realized what this meant, Naruto used wind chakra to flip himself around. The three of them crashed into the water's surface. Channeling chakra to their feet, they stuck there, though a massive wave formed all around them as several ninja, unable to respond with the same speed, struck the water like falling meteors. One person even belly flopped. That had to hurt. "Shall we head in?" asked Akane, gesturing to the island about 1 kilometer away. Naruto and Haku nodded. "Then let's hurry up." Water exploded behind them as the trio rushed toward the island. Several screams told Naruto that a few people had been caught in the resulting wave. He was sure they would be fine. If something like this could do them in, their villages wouldn't have sent them. As they raced toward the island, a shadow passed beneath them. Naruto slowed down at the same time that Akane did. Haku kept moving ahead, until he realized that they had stopped, and then he slowed down as well. All around them, the other genin who, like them, had managed to make good headway, also slowed to a stop. Among those groups were Teams 7, 9, and 10, and the teams from Kyumo and Suna, as well as Akiha's team. "Naruto," Akane said in warning. "Yeah." Naruto nodded in acknowledgement at Akane. "There's something under the water. Something big. Several somethings." "Then shouldn't we hurry up and get out of the water?" asked Haku. "We would," Naruto began. "But..." Akane started. Just then, something huge, easily 10 times the size of a human, burst from the water several meters from their location. If Naruto had to describe it, he'd have said it looked like a giant whale. It was all black, with not an ounce of any color on it. Its mouth was likewise massive. It could easily swallow a human or two whole, and in fact, as they continued to watch, another massive whale shot from the water and swallowed 2 screaming genin whole. Pandemonium broke out among the genin present. Those who were already water-walking ran toward the shore, while those who were still partially submerged scrambled to their feet so they could also begin running. Even the more experienced genin, even the more arrogant ones like Sasuke, didn't stick around after witnessing 2 ninja getting eaten. However, some ninja couldn't escape in time. A number were swallowed whole. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Without wasting a beat, Naruto created numerous shadow clones and had them split up. 25 attacked the whales, while the remaining 25 rushed toward a genin, hefted them over their shoulders, and hauled butt across the water. While this was happening, the real Naruto walked to the shore alongside Haku and Akane. Anyone else would have been rushing. Not them. The reason, of course, was because of Akane. A whale leapt out of the water to swallow them whole, but Akane slammed her foot into its jaw. Naruto almost felt sorry for the whale when blood gushed from its mouth. The creature was thrown high into the air before coming down with a massive splash, spraying water everywhere and creating a huge wave that overtook some of the genin and shoved them into the sandy beach. "You too. I really don't know what to do with you two," Haku sighed. "Does anyone else just casually kick whales like it's nothing?" "Probably not," Akane said. In that moment, another whale flew into the air, high above them as though set to body slam them. It never got the chance as Akane created 2 massive claws of chakra, grabbed the whale, and threw it several hundred meters away, where it struck the water like 200-ton boulder. "But no one is as awesome as we are." "Preach it, Akane." Naruto cheered. Haku, unable to even think up a response, merely sighed. Ten-tailed wolf Utakata watched as 3 Konoha genin casually walked toward the island, beating up every whale that tried to attack them. One of those genin was the same one that had just rescued several ninja from Konoha and the other villages. Having experienced all the darkness that humanity had to offer, Yudakata could not deny that he was shocked, nor could he deny the intrigue bubbling beneath the surface. He did not think there was a soul alive that would save someone from a rival village. Mai Terumi was a wonderful leader who cared deeply for her people, but she would not save someone who didn't belong to her village unless she was hired to, that is. Report back to Lord Mizukage, Yudakata said to the two Chunin hunternin by his side. Tell her that I've found an interesting genin that bears keeping an eye on. Yes, sir. The two hunternin saluted before disappearing. Yudakata, now alone, sat on the deck of the ship, pulled out his pipe, and began blowing bubbles. It would be a while before the Chunin returned. Ten-tailed wolf, the deeper Naruto, Akane, and Haku went, the more they realized that this forest was less of a forest, and more of a twisted jungle filled with danger at every step. So far they had run into man-eating plants, gigantic cats with teeth like razors, and snakes that were large enough to swallow those same cats whole. They were lucky. He and Akane were powerful enough that nothing short of demons could pose a threat to them. Plants were burnt to a cinder, giant cats had their teeth bashed in, and several snakes were boiled alive. Nothing stood a chance against even one of them, never mind them both. Really, it was almost too easy. This is almost too easy, Haku said. I'm grateful that you two are so strong, but I feel like I'm not contributing at all here. Naruto was running through the trees, moving swiftly along the branches, alongside Akane and Haku. Normally they'd have been tree jumping, but the branches here were so thick and entwined around each other that they didn't need to leap from branch to branch. Surprisingly, running like this cost way less energy than jumping. Don't worry too much, Hakuchan, Akane said as she ducked underneath a branch that created an arc in front of her. Said branch actually turned out to be a giant snake, which Naruto cut in half with his sword. Looking back, the redhead grinned. We're only doing the lion's share of the work right now because we want to save your abilities for later. Is that really true? Haku asked. Of course. Liar, Haku muttered to himself. They continued traveling deeper into the jungle, which was damp and humid. The enclosed space trapped moisture and heat. It was almost shocking how much hotter it was inside of this place than it was outside. Naruto was sure there was at least a 20-degree difference. Okay. I think this is far enough, Naruto said, stopping on a branch that was large enough to fit 20 of him standing shoulder to shoulder. Akane and Haku stopped alongside him. I think we should take a quick break here and plan our next move. Akane, what would you like to do? Crossing her arms, Akane tilted her head. Well, I don't particularly care what we do for this test. What I'd really like to do is speak with Saiken, the six-tailed slug. So. For now I suppose we should just ambush some group, steal their card, and wait 5 days until it's time to leave. Haku, asked Naruto. I have no issue with ambushing a group of genin and taking their card, Haku said. But how are we going to find someone in a place this big? I might be a good hunter, but asking me to locate a group within a place like this is a tall order even. For me. You don't need to worry about that. Naruto created a cross-shaped hand seal. Have you forgotten? I have the best jutsu in the entire world when it comes to scouting for enemy forces. Naruto created nearly 100 shadow clones and had them spread out to begin their search. Now it was merely a matter of waiting for his clones to find someone. After that, they would take a card and be done. He sighed. Maybe he shouldn't have gotten his hopes up. Ten-tailed wolf. It was unfortunate that Dosu and his team hadn't passed the first stage of the Chunin exam. It put a large damper on a lot of his plans, many of which had involved sacrificing them in order to achieve his own goals. Although more than half of those goals no longer mattered, since the Chunin exams were not taking part in Konoha, he still had a few goals that could be accomplished that didn't involve razing that village to the ground. Orochimaru wiped his forehead as he surveyed the giant seal, with a circumference that surpassed 5 meters, which he'd created on the jungle floor. It was a complex seal the likes of which he doubted even Jiraiya had ever seen. The complexity of it was something that still boggled his mind. He was only recreating it based off the designs given to him by another. Of course, that was because this particular seal was not of this world. A simple human would never know anything about this seal. Littering the area around the seal were various body parts. They belonged to the genin squad that he had massacred. Orochimaru didn't know who they were, a trio of IWA genin that he'd run into, but they had served his purpose well enough. After killing them, he had sliced them open and used their blood to create this seal. Now all that was needed was chakra. A lot of chakra. It really was too bad that this technique was so chakra-intensive, which meant he wouldn't be able to accomplish his other goal, that being branding Sasuke with his cursed seal. However, his goals were minuscule when compared to those of the higher power that he answered to. Phasing through a series of hand seals, Orochimaru slammed his hands onto the ground. Summoning Jutsu, Demon World Gate. The area within the seal turned bright red, a bloody crimson that glowed with an unholy energy. Chakra, demonic red, crackled from the center like lightning. Several arcs struck a tree branch, breaking it into millions of splinters. The amount of energy being output from the summoning circle was unlike anything even the most powerful of humans could fathom. As more energy erupted from the circle, something emerged. Black and craggy, covered in cracks and rust, composed of human bones, the thing that emerged from the circle was a gate. It did not look like something a human would make, not a sane one. Demonic in every sense of the word, this was a gate that opened a portal to the underworld. It required the blood of human sacrifices to make because only human blood could break through the barrier that kept the two worlds separate. Finally, the gate opened with a slow creak, and something emerged, a hand. Inhuman. That was the only way Orochimaru could describe it. Far larger than any human hand, its skin was rough like leather and purple as though all of the blood had welled up beneath the skin. Nails that were easily 6 inches in length and deadly sharp jutted from the tips. It wasn't long after the hand emerged that a second one came out. Every bit as grotesque as the first, it grabbed the other edge of the gate, and then both hands grasped the gate fiercely as they pulled something far bigger out of the gate behind them. First came a pair of arms, followed by a head with 2 curved horns. Then came a body that was covered in layers of thick muscles, hidden behind dark purple skin that was a combination of leather and scales. 2 legs that were about as thick as Orochimaru's chest soon followed. By the time the creature had fully emerged, it towered over Orochimaru as though he were an ant. Baleful red eyes surveyed the area. He had horns in strategic locations on his body, the elbows, knees, and shoulders. They almost made Orochimaru think of armor, but the demon was naked, so that couldn't be it. And it wasn't like this creature needed armor anyway, not with skin that was harder than diamonds. "Hello there," Orochimaru greeted the creature, who craned its neck to look down at him. "You are the one known as Belphegor, are you not?" "I am he," the demon said, steam emitting from his mouth. "You must be the one whom my master has tasked with aiding us." "I am indeed." Wearing the largest smirk ever, Orochimaru bowed. "My name is Orochimaru." "Humph. I did not ask for your name." Belphegor did not appear to care about him one way or the other. Well, that was fine. Orochimaru was not working with these demons for the sake of making friends. He had more materialistic goals. "The air here is foul. Tell me, is my quarry present?" "The one that you have been tasked with slaying is indeed here. I have tracked his location to some 10 kilometers southeast of here. Shall I guide you?" "Do not bother. I have no need for Belphegor paused, cocked his head to the side, and appeared to almost be listening to something. "There's been a change of plans. I have bigger fish to fry." "Bigger fish?" Orochimaru didn't know who among these genin could be considered bigger fish than the one-tailed Shikaku. Maybe the 9-tailed Jinchuriki? Either way, Orochimaru had no obligation to involve himself further. He'd done his task. Very well then. Belphegor snorted and lumbered off through the trees, though it might have been more accurate to say he smashed through the foliage as though it wasn't even there. Branches apart before he walked into them. It looked like his chakra repulsed everything in his path. What a handy ability. Orochimaru watched him go. Now that his task was done, he had two options, leave or follow Belphegor. It was a no-brainer really. How often would he get to see a clash between a demon and a Jinchuriki? Such a sight would definitely go great with his research. And so, Orochimaru summoned a snake using the standard summoning jutsu, entered its mouth, and told it to stalk Belphegor without being seen. He couldn't wait to witness the upcoming battle. Ten-tailed wolf Naruto and Akane had decided to take a rest at their present location. They had 5 days to find an extra card, and really, it wasn't like they needed more than a few hours to find a group of genin and ambush them. Of course, Haku had no choice but to follow their lead. They wouldn't have it any other way. "What are you two doing?" Haku asked the pair that were currently kneeling on the ground. Several scrolls were laid out before them, and they were searching for one scroll in particular. "We're looking for the scroll with all of our camping equipment," Akane answered as she read the seal of one scroll before tossing it in the pile. "Do we really need camping equipment, though?" asked Haku. "Of course we do," Naruto answered as he picked a scroll up and read it. "We're going to be staying here for 5 days, aren't we? If we're staying that long, then we should at least have a place to stay." "Well, I suppose," Haku agreed, though he sounded a tad reluctant. "I found it," Akane said as she held up one scroll victoriously over her head. "Nice." Naruto resealed all of the other scrolls into his arm, which was also where he put the 2 cards they had on hand. As he did that, Akane set the scroll on the ground, unfurled it, and pushed her chakra into the scroll. All of the symbols, kanji and lines of power, lit up with a light blue glow. There was a puff of smoke. Then something appeared. Haku gawked. "What the hell is this?" "This is what we're using to camp in," Naruto said. "That's not a camp. That's a house." It was indeed a house. To be more precise, it was a 2-story log cabin. Naruto didn't think it looked like much. The exterior was very basic. It really was just a bunch of logs stacked together in such a way that they all fit to create the general square shape of a house. It had a thatched brown roof. There wasn't much more to the outside. "What's your point?" asked Akane. "You said you were getting camping equipment." Haku screamed. "Is a house not camping equipment?" Akane tilted her head in confusion. "Of course not." Haku's face had turned completely red as he screamed, though whether that was because of anger, embarrassment, or something else entirely was up in the air. Likewise, his shoulders were heaving as he breathed heavily. Naruto really did worry about him. Getting so angry over every little thing wasn't healthy. "Well, why don't we go inside?" Naruto suggested. "Don't ignore me." The inside of the cabin looked far more extravagant than the outside, though that wasn't saying much. There were exactly 4 rooms. The living room, the kitchen, the bathroom, and the upstairs lobby. Wooden tiles made most of the cabin's floor, but there were several spots that had a rug thrown over it. The living room had the largest rug. It was made of downy fur, so it was impeccably soft to the touch. Sitting on top of the rug were 2 couches and a coffee table. Naruto went over to the couch and sat down with a sigh. "This is so nice. It's much better than actually sleeping outdoors." "I agree," Akane said as she sat next to him and leaned over. Naruto grinned as his mate's softness pressed into him. "This is what camping is all about." "No, it isn't," Haku growled. "And would you two stop acting like this is a camping trip? We're not on a field trip or anything." Of course, poor Haku went ignored by him and Akane. It was probably more accurate to say they teased him by pretending to ignore him, but it all amounted to the same thing. That said, Naruto could see why Haku was so stiff. They were in Kirigakure, taking part in the Chunin exams, and stuck on an island filled with enemies and monsters. Still, though, their teammate really should have known better. Since when did he and Akane ever take crap like this seriously? Since it was fairly late in the day, Naruto decided to make them all dinner. It was probably a little early for that, but whatever. He was hungry. Since he was making dinner, Naruto had originally been going to make ramen. He was denied. Both Akane and Haku had told him no to ramen, which meant making something else. After grumbling for several minutes at his mates' and teammates' lack of good taste, Naruto ended up cooking a simple stir-fry. It was really just a bunch of veggies that he threw together and cooked in a simple soy sauce base. Since they didn't have a kitchen table, the three of them ate in the living room. Naruto and Akane sat on one couch. Haku sat on the other. The ice user was still grumbling a bit about how they were living in a log cabin during the Chunin exam, but Naruto ignored that in favor of discussing what to do about Utakata. "Do you think we should talk to him during or after the Chunin exam?" he asked. Akane paused in her eating. She slurped up the noodles in her stir-fry, and then said, "I think we should talk to him after this test. He's probably gonna out us to Mei Terumi, but I need to speak with Seiken and the others. Seiken shouldn't be too hard to speak with. He and I have never had any problems with each other. Unlike me and Shikaku. Then. Let's talk to him immediately after this test," Naruto said. "Sounds like a plan. You know, I really hate it when you guys do that," Haku said, blowing on the food trapped between his chopsticks before eating it. "I always feel like you're talking about something completely over my head." "We don't mean to." Naruto shrugged. "We also explained all this to you," Akane added. Haku sighed. "You did, but I still feel completely out of my depth whenever you two begin talking about this. It's disconcerting." "Sorry," Naruto and Akane said at the same time. Haku's shoulders slumped. "You're not sorry at all." As they were enjoying conversation, or rather, as Akane and Naruto had fun poking fun of Haku, a massive surge of energy washed over them. It was unlike anything Naruto had ever felt. The amount of power pouring from one direction was, not just beyond vile, but also not human. Even though it wasn't close to them yet, he could tell from the feel that this was not a human's chakra. It was entirely demonic in nature. While he couldn't tell who or what this vile, repulsive chakra belonged to, Akane stood up, her tails bristling as she looked in the direction that the chakra was emanating from. Judging purely from the look on her face, Naruto determined that she recognized who this chakra belonged to. "What is this vile feeling?" asked Haku as he hugged himself tightly, as though doing so would somehow stop his shaking from growing even worse. "It's Belphegor," Akane answered. "And who is that?" asked Naruto. "A higher demon from hell." Akane frowned. "He's an arrogant fellow who thought he could defeat me in one-on-one combat several thousand years ago. I kicked his ass so he ran back to hell with his tail tucked between his legs." She cocked her head as though listening to something, and as she did, the frown she wore grew more prominent. "It feels like he's gotten a lot stronger since then." "And you've grown a bit weaker," Naruto finished her thought. Akane nodded. "I've only replenished about 1/3 of my full power. Regaining my chakra isn't something that can be done in a day, or even several months." "Then I guess I'll deal with him," Naruto said with a sigh. He hadn't expected to run into a demon during this test. It was kind of troublesome, being forced to fight a demon, but maybe this would prove to make things a bit more interesting. "No." Akane held up a hand. "I'll deal with him. This loser is probably coming for a rematch." "You want to fight this demon? Whatever he is?" Haku asked. "Can you even win?" Akane raised an eyebrow at the boy, as if she couldn't believe he was asking that, but then she grinned. While Haku just shivered, Naruto smiled broadly. He knew that grin quite well. His mate's blood was pumping, and adrenaline was surging through her veins. No doubt the idea of having a rematch with a stronger Belphegor excited her. "Who do you think you're talking to?" she asked. Haku could do nothing but sigh. They raced outside, and after a moment's thought, Naruto decided to seal the cabin again. He could have put a barrier around it, but the chances of it being destroyed during the fight were too high. This was also his only cabin. He didn't want to build another one. That would have been a pain. Besides, he didn't have the resources to build one right now anyway. Stupid exam. It was getting in the way of everything. Akane stood on one of the thicker branches, which was large enough that it could be considered a walkway. Naruto and Haku stood on a branch higher up. Because of that, they were the ones who spotted Belphegor first. "Is that a demon?" asked Haku in shock. "Yep," Naruto said. "That is definitely a demon. It's hideous." "I know. The creature before them the monster before them was huge, easily 10 times taller than a human, though it was about 6 times smaller than the smallest tree they had come across in this jungle. Covered in purple skin, the creature had bulging muscles and veins throbbing all over its body. It was also naked. Naruto and Haku both wrinkled their nose in distaste at how this monster let it all hang out. Did demons have no self-awareness? 2 horns curved around the crown of its ugly head. It had a large nose, which made its narrowed eyes look even smaller than they actually were. 2 large teeth, almost like tusks, jutted from its bottom mouth. Naruto wasn't sure if that was supposed to make it look more menacing or what. He thought it made the thing look stupid. Belphegor. Akane, standing down below with an almost bored look, suddenly narrowed her eyes. "What are you doing here? Was the ass-kicking I gave you several millennia ago not enough? Have you come back to have your ass handed to you once more?" Akane. Belphegor's voice was a rumbling, bass growl. It caused the trees to reverberate. Had he not been sticking to the tree with chakra, Haku might have lost his footing. "Wench, long have I yearned to put you in your place. For years I have toiled to become strong enough so that I might do so. Today is the day you die." "Humph." Akane snorted, raised a single hand, and gestured for Belphegor to come. "If you think you have what it takes to defeat me, then bring it." Belphegor didn't need any encouragement. The demon raised his hands high above his head, clenched them together, and then brought it down on Akane like a hammer smashing in a nail. The tree branch was decimated. Large chunks of wood flew everywhere. Some of the sharper branches impaled the trees, while others merely crashed against the thick trunks and broke apart. Naruto erected a barrier that kept him and Haku from dealing with the brunt of the attack. Several wood chunks struck the blue dome, but they bounced harmlessly off, though Haku still flinched several times. "Relax," Naruto said. "I've got this." "How can you be so calm?" asked Haku as he stood up straight, the only sign of his previous cowering being the embarrassed blush on his cheeks. "Your mate is fighting against a demon. Aren't you worried?" "Worried?" Naruto chuckled at the stupid question. "Of course not. Don't you know? Akane was born to kick demon ass." Ten-tailed wolf leaping back as Belphegor slammed his hands into the branch, Akane landed on another branch. She didn't stay there long. Darting along the surface, she deftly dodged the chunks of wood that flew at her. Left. Right. Several large wooden splinters hurtled her way, but she smashed them apart with one of currently 3 tails. "Do not think you can escape me." Belphegor roared as he opened the gaping maw he called a mouth. Energy gathered within, a tightly packed ball of negative emotions. Black chakra. It crackled within his mouth like a condensed star that had reached critical mass. "If that hits this area, There was enough chakra within that attack that it would easily destroy a good portion of this jungle-like forest. It might also kill some of the genin who were taking part in this exam, and while death was something all ninja faced eventually, there was no reason they should die because of a battle between creatures beyond their understanding. On the other hand, Akane only had about 3 taels worth of power to work with, which meant that, as of this moment, Belphegor was actually quite a bit stronger than her. She couldn't outright block one of his attacks. However, the crackling black sphere suddenly became even more condensed, shrinking from the size of a human head to the size of a fist. Then it unleashed a gigantic beam of energy that would have easily sliced through this forest as if it was nothing, as if the forest was made of paper. Akane wouldn't let that happen. She stopped running and held out her hand. Bright red energy flowed from her palm, coalesced before her, and took shape. As she grabbed it, the area that her hands curled around became a sword, while the rest sharpened into a one-sided blade, a curved odachi, a long sword of at least 2 meters in length. Bending her knees, she raised the odachi above her head and waited. The beam came closer. She waited. Heat from the attack singed her arm hairs. She waited still. It was almost upon her. She waited a little more. Now. She swung the blade down with all her might. Attacks like Belphegor's beam attack always had a weakness, though it might not be immediately obvious at first. While this attack was powerful, and it could easily carve burrows out of this place, that didn't mean it had no weaknesses. Like most beam attacks, this one was weakest at the very center of the attack. Chakra, be it human, demonic, or divine, did not have a form. It was energy. It had no mass. Therefore, it could be disrupted if that energy was broken by a great force, such as being cut apart by a sword at the point where the chakra was easy to disrupt. Akane's attack sliced right through the beam that shot from Belphegor's mouth. She stood in the center of the maelstrom, her blade in front of her, splitting the beam in half. Of course, her sword was also made of energy, but she had compressed it into the form of a sword, which meant that, while not stronger than the beam, its strength was compressed to the point where it acted as such. The beam's power was not as localized as the sword. Therefore, Akane could cut through it. Her knees struggled under the intense weight pushing against her. The bark around her feet cracked. Fortunately, the tree still held. The beam, now split in 2, careened off into 2 different directions. They would have carved a path straight through the forest, but Naruto slammed his hands onto the trunk he stood on. Seals spread across the trees. Then a blue light engulfed them before a large barrier appeared. Unlike the last one, which was a sphere, this barrier merely consisted of 2 walls. Each beam slammed into a wall and detonated with an incredible amount of force. Plumes of fire rose into the air, fierce gale winds crashed through the trees, severing branches as though they were nothing, and numerous cracks appeared on the barrier themselves. However, the shield easily withstood the attack. Akane was going to have to find something she could do to thank Naruto later, and she could think of quite a few things. With that first attack taken care of, Akane decided it was time for her counterattack. She dispelled her sword. Then she coated her arms and legs in her chakra. Red energy exploded around her extremities. This was only the excess chakra, however, the stuff that her limbs simply couldn't contain. The majority of her power was inside of her, enhancing her muscles far beyond what she was normally capable of. Shooting off the branch like a thrown shuriken, Akane flew straight at Belphegor and knocked him hard under the chin. It was the perfect uppercut. Belphegor was lifted off the ground and flew backward, crashing into several trees, which caved underneath his incredible weight. As he struck the ground, Akane landed on a branch several meters above him and smirked down at him. It seems not even 2,000 years has changed your way of thinking. You still try to brute force your way through everything. Bitch. Belphegor clambered to his feet, a nasty scowl marring his face. Do not assume that I will let you talk to me like that. You are no longer more powerful than I. Power isn't everything. Akane raised her hand and created a tiny sphere of energy above it. Meanwhile, Belphegor created a large orb between his hands, which looked like it was close to exploding. An idiot like you wouldn't understand this, but I barely used a third of my power when you and I fought last time. And I'm only using a third now. I can easily defeat you, even if you are a little stronger now than you were back then. The scowl on Belphegor's face was truly something to behold. Then let us see you defeat this. With pleasure. With their attacks charged, the two released their respective techniques. And suddenly, the entire world around them went white. Ten-tailed wolf Utakata had barely a second to erect his defense as an intense, all-powerful wind slammed into him without mercy, knocking him into the air. He erected a bubble around his body. However, that was all he had time to do. He could not expand it, nor could he stabilize it. The ship that had brought him and the genin blew apart. It was an almost instantaneous thing. 1 second it was there, and then the next, the ship was getting ripped to shreds by the fierce winds. Of course, it wasn't like Utakata had the time or stomach necessary to lament the destruction of a ship. Everything around him spun, or rather, he spun around as he and his bubble were tossed through the air. Cracks appeared on the bubble. With the slug's help he was able to repair them, but even so, the strain from keeping the bubble from shattering took everything he had. Sweat broke out on his forehead. His body shook. His shoulders heaved. Despite this, he did what he could, and finally, the fierce winds died down. With his bubble landing on the water, Utakata stood to his feet and stared at the massive, mushroom-shaped cloud of smoke and fire that was rising into the air. He'd never seen anything quite like it. He wasn't sure what impressed him more, the plume of smoke and fire or the barrier that kept it contained. Whoever set up that barrier was a tad late, a voice spoke in his mind. We were hit from the backlash all the way back here. I shudder to think what sort of backlash those genin suffered from. Do you have any idea what that was? The voice inside of his head was Saiken, the seven-tailed slug that resided within him. It had been a number of years since they started talking. At first, both of them had refused to speak with the other, but that changed several years ago during the Kirigakure Civil War. These days they did their best to work together. Before that barrier appeared, I definitely sensed a strong demonic force, Saiken answered. I vaguely recognize the presence, but it has been a long time, so I'm not sure if my guess is correct. However, mixed among the demonic presence, I also sensed Akane. She is somewhere on that island. Wait. Really? The Kyubi is on that island? That is what I just said. I should alert the Mizukage about this. Hold on. Utakata had been 10 seconds away from racing back toward Kirigakure on foot, waste of chakra be damned, but he stopped upon hearing Saiken. Do you really want me to wait? Look, I know that you guys aren't evil or anything, but if there's a Jinchuriki inside of that forest aside from the Shikaku, I think the Mizukage has a right to know about it. I never said she was sealed inside of someone, did I? Utakata felt a jolt race down his spine. It traveled down his back, into his feet, and then back up his spine. Excuse me? What do you mean by that? I mean just what I said. Akane is not presently sealed inside of someone. While her power feels muted, as if she's been weakened, that was definitely the power of Akane and not a Jinchuriki. A Jinchuriki could not use the full strength of their bijou, the reason being that their chakra always mixed in with the bijus. What Saiken was telling him was that there was no second chakra signature mixing with Akane's. In other words, Akane was currently not hampered by any seal. But then, what is she doing here? Your guess is as good as mine. Utakata had no idea what to do in this situation, but he knew that regardless of what was happening on that island, he would at some point need to inform the Mizukage about it. They had 5 days until this phase of the exams would come to an end. During that time, it would be a good idea to alert the Mizukichi that the Kyuubi was somewhere inside during the second stage tests. You can do what you want, of course, but I would recommend talking with Akane first. We don't know why she is here. Since we don't have the full picture, going to the Mizukichi without at least learning about why Akane is present would be folly, don't you agree? Utakata didn't like it, but he also knew that Seiken had a point. Without knowing Akane's motive, alerting the Mizukichi would only bring trouble. Saying that, it wasn't like they couldn't do nothing. I guess we should go in there and find Akane before anything else can happen. We could, but I don't recommend it. Why not? Didn't I mention it already? I sensed a strong demonic force before that barrier went up. That means Akane is currently fighting a powerful demon. Going in there right now would mean getting in her way, and trust me when I say that you do not want to get in her way when she's fighting. I suppose that is true. It is very true. Now, I suggest waiting here for the fight to finish, and then searching for Akane. I guess I have no choice. With a deep sigh of dissatisfaction, Utakata sat down inside of the bubble, which rode along the waves that had been kicked up by the winds. He looked toward the barrier, which had dispersed now. The mushroom cloud was huge. Somewhere near that giant cloud of smoke was a creature capable of annihilating entire nations, and that creature was currently fighting with a demon that seemed every bit as powerful. Utakata didn't know how to feel about that. However, one thing was for sure. He was very glad that he was not wherever that fight was currently taking place. Ten-tailed wolf Akane had never been more glad that she had decided to fight Belphegor. Had Naruto been the one to fight him, she was sure he would have won, but it could have come at a great cost. With only 3 tails worth of power, she did not have the strength necessary to create a barrier that could withstand her mate's power. Had Naruto fought and really let loose, this entire island would have probably become a wasteland. The area around them certainly looked decimated enough to be won. The forest had been burned away, though that was not to say it was completely gone. What parts of the forest remained, however, was covered in ash and plasma. Trees were burnt to cinders. Branches sloughed off as though they had melted from the extreme heat. No longer did they tower over them, not in this area. Now they were just stumps and ash. Knowing that Belphegor's attack could kill her if she let it, Akane had attacked with a smaller, more concentrated jutsu. It was like the difference between a rapier and a hammer. The hammer might have more power, but the rapier could pierce far more easily. Her attacks had punched right through Belphegor's. This had caused a chain reaction, which resulted in the landscape now being what it was. She really was lucky that Naruto was around. He had erected a barrier in time to keep the damage from spreading far. Though she suspected some backlash from the intensely hot winds had traveled through the island. Even so, all of the genin should still be alive. She hoped. Belphegor was several meters away and slowly clambering to his feet. Burns covered his body. Some of the skin was just raw, but there were quite a few patches that had burnt off, revealing the thick muscles underneath as they pulsed and squirted blood. Despite the damage that had been done to him, it didn't look like the demon was ready to give up any time soon. "You're a stubborn one," Akane sighed. "I could say the same to you, wench." Belphegor flexed his power, which surged around his body like a tornado. Akane clicked her tongue when she noticed all of the wounds she had inflicted on him healing. "I do not know how you retain so much power, but I'll be damned if I let a cunt like you get the better of me." "Your insults are about as original as your appearance," Akane said. "Get bent, you two-bit cliché." Belphegor howled at the insult, which was much better than anything he could come up with, and charged at her. This was what Akane wanted. She had realized something during their initial series of attacks. Belphegor was just too powerful. Without her full strength available, she wouldn't stand a chance in a battle of attrition, so she needed to put him down now. And the only way to do that was to fight up close and personal. The thing about close quarters combat was that the amount of chakra someone had didn't necessarily matter. Sure, chakra could boost the body, increasing strength, speed, and agility in equal measures, but the body could only be enhanced so much. That meant it was limited by what it could contain. Belphegor, for all his power, did not possess a body capable of containing vast quantities of chakra. Demons had a set amount of power. That Belphegor seemed to have gotten stronger proved only one thing. That strength wasn't his. That power wasn't his. Someone else was controlling his strings. Akane planned on finding out who that was. Once more, the limbering Belphegor towered over her like a giant, slamming his fists into the ground with incredible impact. Akane wasn't there anymore. She had already leapt back to avoid his predictable attack. Once his fists had smashed into the ground, she leapt onto one of them and ran up his arm. Belphegor wasn't going to stand for this. Like a human trying to swat at a bug, he tried to smash her flat, but it was no use. Akane nimbly darted to and fro, avoiding every attack that came her way. Loud clapping, the sound of thunder, echoed across the landscape every time Belphegor slapped his arm. Before too long, Akane was already up close and personal. Gwa! Spittle flew from Belphegor's mouth as Akane drove her foot into the underside of his chin. She was sure seeing someone so small kicking Belphegor, who was even bigger than the Hokage Tower, probably looked comical. Even so, the strength of her legs could not be underestimated. Her attack launched Belphegor into the air, though he didn't get too much lift. Even so, it was enough that he crashed to the ground seconds later on his back. Akane wasn't going to give him a chance to recover. She raced forward, leapt into the air, and extended her left leg, which she had coated in a massive amount of chakra. Falling from the sky like a meteor, she slammed into Belphegor's solar plexus. The sound of snapping ribs echoed across the landscape. A huge grin came to her face as her foe screamed in pain. Perhaps it was because seeing him like this made her overconfident, but she became surprised when something strong constricted around her. It was a hand. Belphegor had grabbed her and was squeezing her entire body with an ironclad grip. Akane grunted as her arms, ribs, shoulders, and hips felt like they were being ground into a paste. She circulated chakra through her body, and then expelled it out of her pores. Belphegor growled as he let go of her. She landed back on the ground as he stared at his hand, at the burns coating his skin and the smoke rising from it. Even when you are weak, you're as annoying as you ever were. I take that as a compliment. Despite displaying so much confidence, Akane was frowning on the inside. This wasn't working. Her attacks were doing damage, but Belphegor just kept healing from them. He definitely had a surplus of chakra, but that shouldn't have been possible unless someone else was supplying it for him, in which case, she needed to find some way to cut him off from the source. Isn't there a seal that can accomplish this? Belphegor attacked her again, creating a massive beam of energy that shot at her from his hands. Akane didn't leap over it. That would have put her in a disadvantageous position. Instead, she raced toward the left as the beam plowed into the ground and erupted in a geyser of fire and slags of molten earth. The problem is that I don't know a whole lot about sealing. That's more Naruto's forte. A large creature composed of black hellfire appeared above Belphegor's head, demonic and vile, holding the appearance of a demon with a goat's head. Wings flared from its back as her foe brought his hands down as though that was a single. The creature released a silent shriek as it flew straight at her. Tch. Akane recreated her energy sword and slashed at the creature just as it came at her. There was no resistance. She had released a burst of chakra, timed perfectly, to the technique. The hellfire was split down the middle. A fist appeared before her without warning. There was only a second for Akane to make a decision, which she did, taking the attack for the sake of countering the attack. She swung her sword seconds before the fist plowed into her like a battering ram busting through a door. A grunt escaped her lips as her feet left the ground. Air whistled around her. The world flashed by in a blur of colors. Her lungs were deprived of oxygen as she slammed back first into the ground. She plowed through the dirt, tumbling and rolling with a series of boneless flops. Her left shoulder squealed with pain as the joint was yanked out. Agony ripped through her as her right leg was bent at an awkward angle. Her back screamed as it struck a rock that shattered underneath her. It hurt, certainly, but it wasn't like she hadn't been hurt worse. When she finally came to a stop, Akane needed a moment to regain her bearings. She blinked several times. The sky above her was a bright blue. The mushroom-shaped cloud from hers and Belphegor's attacks exploding against each other had disappeared. Gaga! Climbing slowly to her feet, Akane glanced at Belphegor, who had fallen to his knees and was holding his severed stump of a wrist. Blood spurted from the hand, large droplets that splattered against the ground and created numerous puddles. The scent of iron hung heavy in the air. His hand lay on the decimated earth. The fingers were twitching. "You really are an idiot," Akane muttered. Belphegor looked up and scowled. "Shut up, you fucking bitch. I'm gonna dash." He never finished that sentence. For Akane had created a massive chakra claw from her hand, grabbed Belphegor by the face, lifted him off the ground, and then slammed him back into the earth. A large dent appeared around his body. Cracks spread from the center of impact. They split open the ground, growing larger until inexplicably stopping right before Akane's feet. Even though he was being pinned to the ground, Belphegor continued to struggle. He grabbed onto her chakra claw and flared his own power, disrupting the claw and making it break apart. Akane just created another one. She grabbed his face again, and this time, she dug the nails of her claw into his skin. Griaya. With a deep sigh, Akane ground Belphegor's head into the hard earth, lifted his head again, and then slammed it back into the ground and repeated the process. Each time she did this, the earth would shake. His screams grew in pitch. The burning scent of flesh overpowered everything else. Smoke rose from his burning face. However, soon, all of that began subsiding, until his voice was nothing but a whimper and his struggles had all but stopped. Akane waited for several seconds to make sure he wasn't faking it. When she was sure he really had been defeated, she dispelled her chakra claw, jumped onto his stomach, and walked up his body until she was standing on his face, which had become so burnt that the muscles were showing where the skin had melted off. "I told you that. Brute strength can only get you so far." She grinned down at him. "Who are you working under? Which demon is pulling your strings, Belphegor?" "Fuck you." Belphegor spat. "You're not getting another word out of GGGYYAA. Now. Akane removed her sandal from the melted flesh that she had been digging it into. She was going to have to clean that sandal. "I asked you a question. It would be rude not to answer, and you know how much I hate people who are rude." She smiled. "Now, I'll ask again, which puppet master is pulling your strings?" Belphegor looked away as a cold sweat broke out on his skin. He knew he was defeated, and that his silence was only delaying the inevitable. He would tell her what she wanted to know. Demons like him were, at heart, cowards. All demons had an intense fear of death. They would gladly betray the one who controlled them if it meant living another day. "If you delay this any longer, I'm going to be most cross with you," Akane said. Belphegor's eyes widened in fear. "All right. I'll tell you." It was IJHNNNGGGG. Akane's eyes widened as an overwhelming presence appeared around them. With barely a second to react, she leapt off Belphegor, her battle senses screaming danger. Landing on the ground, she watched in shock as a blazing hellstorm of fire erupted from the ground and engulfed Belphegor. "Master! No! What are you doing? Don't kill me!" Belphegor squealed. "You have forgotten your mission," a voice said, coming from everywhere at once. "You went off to settle an old score instead of accomplishing the task I set for you." "I am Disappointed. 2 was going to accomplish your task once I killed this CUAH. You should have accomplished your task before settling the score. Now pay for your lack of progress with your life. Belphegor's screams became incoherent as the hellfire engulfing him ate away at his body. Akane watched in consternation as the demon's flesh melted, as his insides bubbled and popped, as his entire body sizzled like cooked meat until, all too soon, his body simply couldn't withstand the heat and withered away. Only then did the hellfire cease. Akane. I see you escaped my control. But you have grown weaker. How interesting. Could this decrease in power have something to do with the boy over there? This man, demon, whatever, was obviously talking about Naruto, who stood several meters from where the battle had taken place alongside Haku. She looked around. The voice didn't seem to be coming from anyone there, meaning that it was likely being projected from the underworld. She tried not to bite her lip. There were only a few demons who were powerful enough to manifest their powers in the outside world. Whoever this person was, they had powers that were on par with the gods. Who are you? A loud, rumbling, belly laugh echoed around the area. I am the one who will destroy this world and rebuild it to suit my desires. You may call me Mundus. Mundus. Akane's breathing hitched. A chill raced down her spine as her entire body shuddered from head to toe. Mundus laughed again. I see you recognize my name. I may have heard that name once or twice before I was sent down to the elemental nations. Akane narrowed her eyes. I see you've been regaining your power. It took a long time, but my power has finally been almost fully restored. The gods may have halted my progress last time, but now the only ones who can stand in my way are you and the other bijou who've sealed the elemental nations from the underworld. Hehe, I hope you and your comrades enjoy this peace while it lasts. Once the barrier around this little island is broken, I'll swarm this place with my minions and make it my domain. That's never gonna happen, Akane said, though she didn't think she sounded nearly as confident as she had hoped. So you say. But we both know that without all 9 of you, you'd stand no chance of even sealing me, much less defeating me. Remember these words. Your days are numbered. Akane ground her teeth together as Mundus' laughter echoed all around her, slowly disappearing. That probably meant he couldn't hold open the barrier any longer. Still, the fact that he could project his power into this world at all was troubling. With Mundus' last words weighing heavily on her mind, Naruto and Haku walked up to her. While the ice user cast a glance at the burnt corpse of Belphegor, her mate studied her with a glance that seemed casual to the average eye. Who was that? He asked. Akane's shoulders slumped. I suppose it would be a good idea to tell you. Come on. Let's find a team, take their card, and then find a place where we can wait out the rest of this exam. I'll tell you then. Naruto accepted her words with a nod, and while Haku frowned at the subject being shoved aside, he didn't say anything. As they moved off to find some poor genin squad, Akane did her best to ignore the worry that was causing her gut to clench. She had finally discovered who had controlled her that day almost 13 years ago. Now she wished she hadn't. Ten-tailed wolf getting their hands on another card was easy, especially when compared to Akane's battle against Belphegor. They hadn't even needed to fight. Some of the genin close to their battle site had been rendered unconscious during the shockwave from Akane's attack cancelling out Belphegor's. They had stolen the card of the first squad they came across genin from Konoha and then hauled but out of the area. The place where they set up shop was on the opposite side of the island. Outside of forest and rivers, it appeared this place also had several subterranean caverns, one of which they had decided to use as their new base of operations. This meant they couldn't use their cabin. However, that was a small price to pay for the security brought about by Naruto's sealing technique. I still don't understand how these squiggles are going to keep enemies from finding us, Haku said with a frown as he stared at the numerous complex lines and kanji that covered the room they were using. It's called a dimension seal, Naruto explained as he cooked their food over a grill. This seal separates the space we are in from reality by creating a pocket dimension. Haku blinked. Is that even possible? Of course. Naruto rotated the kebabs, trying not to let his stomach gurgle as the scent of sizzling meat filled his nose. It's not like creating a separate dimension is hard. Anyone can do it with enough chakra. The issue is that pocket dimensions are really fragile. If someone attacked this place, the dimension would be destroyed and we'd all die. Suddenly, I don't feel very safe anymore, Haku muttered. Relax, Naruto said as he took the kebabs off the grill and put them on a plate. No one is going to attack us now. We're in a separate dimensions. Chakra emissions, sense, nothing from us will reach the outside world, so no one will know we're even here. I guess. Haku sighed as Naruto set the plate on the table that he and Akane were sitting at. Sitting down next to his mate, Naruto grabbed 2 kebabs, gave one to Akane, and chowed down on the other one. So. I think it's about time we talked about what happened back during that fight with Belphegor, he said. Yes, I suppose it is. Akane sighed, took a bite of her food, and then swallowed. That voice you two heard was Mundus. He is the ruler of the underworld, one of the most powerful demons to ever exist. Naruto tried to wrap his head around this new information. Akane had never told him about this before, though he knew for a fact that she wasn't lying. He assumed she hadn't said anything because she didn't think Mundus would ever be a threat. Long before the Bijou were ever created, the gods fought against the demons. This battle spanned for several millennia, and it seemed like the struggle would never end. She paused. You might find it interesting to know that humans were created during this time. They were primitive at first, but as the battle between heaven and hell became more intense, they grew as a people. How long ago was this? Asked Haku. I'm not sure. Akane shrugged. The god's sense of time is very skewed. 1,000 years is but a blink of the eye to them, and I have no frame of reference to go off of, since I wasn't even alive during that time. Shaking her head, Akane returned to her original point. Anyway, the battle was long and hard, far harder than anything the gods have had to do before or since. However, at some point, they were able to seal away Mundus and his followers. Of course, there was no barrier after they beat Mundus back, but all of the most powerful demons were already dead or weakened to the point where they couldn't attack. The only ones that slipped through were the weaker ones. Though even the weakest demon was capable of decimating an entire nation. She gave us a moment to digest this knowledge, taking one of the meat pieces of the kebab into her mouth and silently chewing. Naruto also ate his food as he contemplated her words. He wouldn't say he was surprised. It was more like he simply couldn't fathom what he was hearing. That just went to show him how much more he needed to learn. Can this Mundus break through the barrier you created? Haku asked. Akane shook her head. No. Our barrier was created with the understanding that there are demons more powerful than us. Not even a god can break through this barrier. However, because it was created like a net to keep the most powerful demons out, small ones can slip in from time to time. That's also why he was able to manifest his power. He can't break through it, but in exchange, he can send his power onto the mortal plane. And now he's actively seeking a way to destroy the barrier, from the sound of it, Naruto said. That would be a sound assumption, Akane agreed. It sounds like we have a troublesome time ahead of us. Akane didn't disagree. The seals that separated this space from the real world glowed a vibrant blue in the darkly lit cavern. This is. Utakata stared at the massive summoning circle underneath his feet. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before, and considering he had constant access to the seal that kept Seiken inside of him, that said a lot. While he wasn't really good at seals, he at least understood them. This one was completely incomprehensible. A demon summoning. Demon. Summoning. It is a type of demonic summoning circle. It's different from the sealing that you humans are so fond of. This isn't a sealing technique so much as a demonic ritual. The principle is the same as the summoning jutsu in that it uses writing to summon something more powerful than the one summoning it, but that is where the similarities end. This is far different from a standard summoning jutsu. Utakata looked at the circle, written in strange hieroglyphs that he had never seen before, and then he switched his gaze to the bodies, or rather, the body parts, that were lying strewn across the ground. It was such a gory mess that he couldn't tell how many people had been killed. It looks like several people were sacrificed to enact this ritual, he murmured. While he couldn't see Seiken, Utakata could feel the great beast nodding inside of him. Rituals to summon demons always require lives to be sacrificed. Seiken's voice had taken on a disgusted quality. Because of the way we set up the barrier, the only way to weaken it is to sacrifice a human. Human blood is a great catalyst for these sort of rituals, though you normally want to use the blood of innocence since the more pure a soul is, the stronger the ritual summoning will be. Utakata nodded noncommittally. He didn't know much about these rituals, so he deferred to Seiken's expertise. As he stood there and studied the circle, not quite sure what he should be looking for, the two Huntanin that he had sent to report to the Mizukage appeared before him, kneeling on the ground with their heads bowed. "We have reported to the Mizukage," one of them said, though he trailed off. Utakata thought it was because of the scene that was surrounding them. "Thank you," Utakata said. "I have another report that I would like you to deliver, but that can wait for now. The first thing we need to do is acquire another ship to transport the genin back to Kirigakure once the second stage is over. I would like one of you to do that, please." "Yes, Utakata," one of the Huntanin said before disappearing in a splash of water. Utakata thought about what he should in this situation. The first thing he needed to do was find the Kyubi. That was of tantamount importance right now, since she was the only one who could give him a detailed accounting of what happened here. "I would like you to begin searching for a squad of Konoha genin," Utakata said at last. "They should have a blonde boy, a member of the Yuki clan, and a red-haired girl who looks to be about 15 or 16 years old. The redhead was supposedly the Kyubi, or that was who Seiken had told him was the Kyubi. He hadn't been sure at first. Apparently, the Kyubi, or rather, Akane, had been suppressing her power to the point where Seiken had dismissed the idea that she might be the Kyubi at first. However, now that he had felt her power more clearly, he had told Utakata without any uncertainty that the person they were looking for was that redhead. "Yes, Utakata." The only remaining Huntanin bowed his head, pressed his left fist to his right chest, and then he disappeared. "We should get going as well." "Right you are." Giving the area around him one last look, Utakata disappeared in a water shunshin, leaving behind the rotting corpses of several IWA ninja who'd been unfortunate enough to be used in this demon summoning ritual. Ten-tailed wolf Akane, Haku, and Naruto spent an entire day within the cave before becoming bored. Well, Akane and Naruto grew bored. Since they were still with someone Haku, that meant they couldn't have sex. What's more, there was very little they could do inside of such a small space. Naruto had thought about expanding the space, but that would have required more seals, and not only did he not want to draw up more seals, he didn't want to run the risk of the current seals being messed up. Seals were volatile when combined. If he combined them wrong, there was a good chance that the seal would explode in his face. In this instance, if such a thing were to happen, all three of them would probably die since they were inside of the seal. It really was too bad. Naruto had wanted to create a separate room for him and Akane. That way they could have sex without Haku seeing everything. He didn't really care if the boys saw them, but Haku was easily embarrassed, and if they had sex with him present, he would flip out. That would totally kill the mood. "I think we should go outside," Akane said suddenly. Haku, who was sitting on a stone bench that Naruto had created using wind chakra, looked up and frowned at her. "I thought you said we should remain here until the second test was over." "But I'm bored," Akane said. That's not a very good reason. Aren't you also bored, Hakuchan? No. You're lying. Haku looked away, his expression the kind that Naruto had sometimes worn when he got caught playing a prank. Maybe we should go out, Naruto said. When Akane and Haku stared at him, one hopeful and the other incredulous, he elaborated by saying, there's a good chance that Utakata and the other Kiri ninja know about the battle that took place between Akane and Belphegor. I bet you anything that May even knows about it by now. Saiken would have probably recognized your chakra signature, right? Probably, Akane said. All us Bijou have the ability to sense each other, so he definitely would have sensed me when I fought against Belphegor. Right. Naruto nodded. So maybe we should just go outside, have you flare your power, and let Saiken find us. That's a good idea, Akane said. It's much better than waiting. That's a terrible idea, Haku retorted, though he stood up anyway. I know I'm going to regret this. Damn it. With their decision made changed from their previous decision to remain where they were, Akane, Naruto, and Haku emerged from the cave after erasing the seals. There was no sense in letting anyone see them. Naruto didn't want people recreating them without his knowledge. All right. Akane took a deep breath. Here we go. A sudden surge in energy caused the hairs on Naruto's neck to vibrate. Chakra poured off Akane in waves, coating her body in what appeared to be ethereal red flames. The air around her hummed. The ground beneath her feet cracked. Naruto watched as a few rocks suddenly began levitating, as though gravity were being affected by Akane's power. Seconds ticked by, and then, the flames lessened until they disappeared, and the feeling of Akane's power slowly vanished. There, she said. It's not as powerful as it could have been, but I don't have Belphegor masking my power with his either. Saiken should have felt that so long as his Jinchuriki stayed in the area. So, now it's a waiting game, Naruto said as he crossed his arms and sighed. There was no telling how long it would take Saiken to sense Akane, and there was no telling how long it would take Utakata to reach them. They might not even be around. For all they knew, he'd gone back to Kiri to report what happened to the Mizukage. Deciding to make a game of trying to sense Utakata before he arrived, Naruto created a small, invisible dome of wind chakra around his body. He closed his eyes. Within his mind, he could see everything within the dome, from the rocks and gravel on the ground, to the leaves that passed through the barrier. This was a lot like a sonar. Slowly expanding the wind dome, Naruto let the inner vision of the world around him expand inside of his mind. There was a lot of information being presented. Things like insects crawling along the ground, birds flying in the air, and animals climbing up and down tree branches, which rustled and swayed. Since a lot of these animals were pretty big, and in packs, it meant they were basically filling up his mind. Naruto tilted his head as something suddenly entered his wind sonar's range. It was a person. They were wearing a kimono, were thinner than the average ninja, and carried a pipe and jug in his clothing. That was definitely Utakata. As if to prove his point, the man in question dropped from a branch above them and landed in a crouch. When he stood up, he looked at the three of them, stopping to study each one in turn. His eyes landed on Akane last. So it's true, Utakata murmured. You really are the Kyuubi. It's been a while, hasn't it, Saiken, Akane greeted. Utakata frowned, but then he cocked his head to the side as though listening to something only he could hear. Saiken says. It has indeed been a while. I'm surprised to see you teaming up with Konoha. I don't see why you would be. Akane smiled as she gestured at Naruto. After all, my mate is a Konoha ninja. Utakata paused, his eyes growing larger until they were about the same size as a Rasengan. As the man looked from Akane to him, Naruto wondered who was more shocked to hear that news, Saiken or Utakata. Whoever was surprised, Saiken clearly recovered first. Utakata, acting as the mouthpiece, gave a clearly scripted response. I see. Your mate, is it? That is interesting. You haven't taken a mate in many thousands of years. This boy must be quite special. You have no idea. Akane grinned. In either event, I don't think we should continue this conversation here. Perhaps we should find a place where we can speak in private. That would be a good idea, Utakata said. That time he didn't sound like he was reading from a script. Since it would be easier just going back to the cave, Akane, with Naruto and Haku trailing behind her, went back to the cave with Utakata in tow. There, Naruto unsealed several tatami mats, a low table, and some seating pads for everyone to sit around the table with. An expression of supreme annoyance appeared on Haku's face when he saw this. If you had this all along, why didn't you bring it out before now? Because this is for formal meetings, Naruto said. Why would I bring this out unless we were having an important discussion with some official or a jonin from another village? But. After sputtering for several seconds, Haku sighed and slumped onto a pillow. I give up. Do whatever you want. Thanks. I will. Haku sighed again. Tentatively sitting down, his expression a mixture of surprise and wariness, Utakata looked at Akane and Naruto as they sat side by side, opposite him. Perhaps you should start by telling us how exactly you came to be a Konoha ninja, Seiken said through Utakata. You want knowledge from that far back? Akane thought about it, and then nodded. Very well, though be aware that I cannot tell you everything. Some of what happened is personal. Not even the Hokage knows about it. While Utakata looked disgruntled, Seiken must have been accepting because he said, I understand. Naruto remained silent as Akane told Seiken everything that she was willing to. She told him about how she had been controlled and forced to attack Konoha, about how the last thing she remembered before being sealed inside of Naruto was 3 glowing red eyes, about how she decided to train him and they eventually fell in love. She then revealed that she had performed a ritual that turned him into a Hanyo, a very misleading term since he was technically half divine instead of half demon. Sadly, there was no term for people like him, seeing how he was the first, and half angel wouldn't have worked since it wasn't accurate. While Utakata looked like he was being repeatedly punched in the face with every sentence spoken, he didn't say anything until the very end. That is quite the story, he admitted. Isn't it? Akane wore a lively smile, though only for a moment, and then it disappeared as her lips turned into a serious frown. My story aside, we're in a lot of trouble. After defeating Belphegor, I learned that the demon controlling him was Mundus. Utakata looked nonplussed. A second passed. 2 seconds passed. After the 30-second mark hit, the man finally began to look surprised. Naruto suspected that Seiken had been telling him who Mundus was. Wait. So there's some great demon emperor who wants to break free of the underworld and take over the elemental nations? Seriously? Yes. Seriously. Akane nodded. Mundus probably wants to make the elemental nations his domain because the gods cannot interfere here thanks in large part to the barrier. If he can manage it, he'll not only have a foothold on the human world, but he'll eventually be able to launch an all-out assault on Takuma no Hara, which I believe is his true objective. Utakata pressed a hand to his face as if he had a massive headache all of a sudden. This is way outside my pay grade. There's more, Akane said. Utakata groaned. Mundus clearly has agents here in the human world. Belphegor could have only been summoned by a human who had the secrets of demonic summoning techniques imparted to them. There's no telling how many agents he has, but we can safely assume that at least one of them is in the Chunin exams. Can you give me any more bad news? Asked Utakata. I can if you want me to. Please don't. Utakata raised a hand to stop Akane from talking. She and Naruto shared a grin, while Haku remained silent next to them and the Kiri Jonin thought over everything that he'd been told. He eventually came to a decision. Okay. Here's what we'll do. I'm going to tell the Mizukage everything you Just told me. You three will finish these exams, and then you'll probably be requested to meet with the Mizukage and explain what you can to her. So long as the Hokage can also be present, Naruto said. Don't forget that we aren't Kiri ninja. Utakata nodded. That goes without saying. He stood up. Anyway, I'll head off now. Stay safe. As if we need you to tell us that, Naruto muttered as Utakata left the cavern, rushing out with speed that would have made even someone of Kakashi's caliber blink. So, what are we supposed to do now? Naruto asked. Akane crossed her arms and gave a thoughtful frown. The fireball jutsu flared within her mind seconds later. We could always have sex. That's a good idea, Naruto agreed. That's a terrible idea. Haku snapped. Don't be such a downer, Hakuchin, Akane said. You should think about us for a change, Naruto added. You're the ones who should think about me. Haku shouted. And thus, Naruto and Akane spent the rest of their 5 days mercilessly teasing Haku. Poor Haku. Ten-tailed wolf. The 5 days passed slowly, but there wasn't much they could do about that. They had completed this test within the first day. And that had been with Akane getting into a fight with a high-class demon. Compared to their first day there, every other day was dull. Naruto sent out a few shadow clones to check on the other teams. He wanted to see, specifically, how the rookie squads that his team had come with were doing. It looked like all of them had passed. Kabuto's team had also passed, but that didn't surprise Naruto. There were a number of other teams that had passed as well, including Akiha's, the squad from Kumo, the Suna team with Gaara, a squad from IWA, and 2 more squads from Kiri. Including his team, Teams 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, Kabuto's team, Akiha's team, the other Kiri teams, the Suna, and the Kumo and IWA teams. It meant there were 11 teams in total that had passed. That was less than half the teams that had taken part in this test. Utakata hadn't been kidding when he said at least half the squads would fail this test. After the 5 days had passed, Naruto, Akane, and Haku went down to the beachhead, where several other genin teams were already waiting. Gaara's team was there, and so was Teams 7, 10, and 11. Everyone else slowly trickled in before, within an hour, all of the teams that had passed were present. About an hour after the last team arrived, Utakata came in on his ship, a new ship, Naruto noticed. While several ninja squads were dispatched into the jungle, presumably to find the remaining teams that failed, Utakata stood before them on the beachhead, gazing at them with a small smile. All of you have done an excellent job. By passing the second test, you have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are among the best your generation has to offer. Take pride in that. His words elicited a number of smiles from the people present. Kiba cheered and Akamaru barked. Sasuke smirked. So did Niji. Even the teams from Kiri and Kumo released brief cheers. Really, only a few among them, like Samui, didn't display even a hint of emotion. Naruto wondered how many of these genin were aware of the battle that had transpired between Akane and Belphegor. Had any of them felt the backlash from that battle, or were the ones who had lost the only people that suffered from any backlash? We will be leaving momentarily. However, first we must see to it that all the people who lost are recovered. I'd like all of you to board this vessel. We'll depart once everyone is on board. As the many teams walked up the boarding ramp that was embedded into the sand, Naruto cast a glance back at the island they had stayed on for 5 days. It looked a lot different now. Akane and Belphegor's battle had decimated a good portion of the island's center. Naruto didn't want to even imagine how long it would take for all that foliage to recover. With a shake of his head, Naruto finished boarding the ship, sat down, and began the waiting game. He hated waiting. Ten-tailed wolf, there had been a few deaths. While no one said anything, Naruto had seen the body bags of several genin that had been killed during the second test. All genin sign a waiver stating that they are aware of the risks, that there is a chance they could die, but Naruto wondered how many of these kids really understood that. Well, if they didn't before, they would now. The ship carried the genin all the way back to Kirigakure. It took about an hour for them to reach port, but once they were docked, everyone disembarked, stepping onto the wooden dock, where several people were waiting for them. Everyone froze when they got their first glimpse of the Mizukage. Lustrous auburn hair swished as it descended from her crown, styled into a herringbone in the back, with a topknot on her crown, and 4 bangs framing her face and covering her left eye, leaving one green orb exposed. Sensuous pink lips complemented her fair complexion. Her long-sleeved dress was dark blue and fell just below the knees. A zipper in the front kept it closed. Since the dress had no shoulders, her slender frame and a good portion of cleavage hit the genin like a bad case of hormones. The boys didn't stand a chance. Naruto shook his head as several genin pinched their nose to keep their blood where it belonged. Mei Terumi smiled at those gathered by the dock, passing briefly over him before moving on. He clearly saw the recognition in her eyes when she caught sight of him, Akane, and Haku. That meant Utakata had already told her about them. Standing by her side, looking far more ancient next to the gorgeous redhead, was none other than their own Hokage. "I am pleased to see that so many of you have made it back in one piece," she began. "You who have withstood the trials of the second test of the Chunin exams are now one step closer toward moving up in rank. Before I tell you all what the next phase of the Chunin exams will be, let me tell you a bit about why the hidden villages decided to create the Chunin exams in the first place." She paused for a moment. In that time, Naruto caught the old Hokage's eye. Old man Hiruzen Sarutobi nodded at him once, signaling that he was aware of what happened during this stage of testing. That meant the Hokage would be at the meeting that he, Akane, and Haku were going to have with the Mizukage. Good. Wars are costly, Mei said, and to those who didn't understand, it was a very random change of topic. In terms of money, manpower, and time, wars are the most costly endeavor a hidden village could ever undertake. Not only do they cost a lot, but while you are at war, the amount of money you can make goes down because your ninja aren't taking as many missions. "What does war have to do with the Chunin exams?" asked the boy in the cat suit. What was his name? Naruto couldn't remember hearing it. The curvature to Mei's lips made Catboy gulp. To put it quite simply, the Chunin exams were created as a method of replacing war. By pitting our genin against each other, we avoid facing serious conflicts that could potentially destroy the elemental nations. Not only that, but by showing the skills of our genin to prospective clients, we can increase our income. It's basically killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Naruto was surprised that he didn't know this, but he supposed that was because he never cared about the Chunin exams. It made sense, though, when he thought about it. Wars spilled blood, cost money and lives, and took time away from missions that could have been used to earn money. If they replaced war with the Chunin exams, it would go a long way toward curbing all of those excess losses. The reason I'm telling all of you this is because the next stage of the Chunin exams will be a tournament that pits teams against each other. Mei smiled when everyone tensed. Since genin often work in teams, we decided to make this tournament a team battle. Everyone looked confused. The genin looked at each other, as though trying to figure out exactly what she meant. A genin's performance will be judged on a number of factors during this final exam, Mei added as she began listing things off her fingers. Their individual ability to make quick decisions, how well they work with their teammates, individual stats compared to team stats. You will be judged by a group of Chunin and Jonin personally selected by yours truly. Mei took a deep breath before plunging on. You should make note of this for the tournament, but it is possible for a team of genin to become Chunin without winning a single match, provided they display the traits necessary for a Chunin. On the other hand, it's also possible that only 2, 1, or even none of the genin on your teams will make it to Chunin. What we're looking for isn't just strength, individual or otherwise, but the unique qualities that can only be found in a leader. Then doesn't this also mean that a team can win the whole tournament and still not make it to Chunin? Asked Samui. That is possible, Mei admitted, but the chances of that happening are rare. After all, if a team wins the tournament, then it's likely because they have great teamwork and individual strength. However, it's not impossible either. With her question satisfied, Samui stepped back into the crowd. Are there any more questions? Asked Mei. No one said anything. Very well. The final test of the Chunin exams will take place in exactly 1 month. This is being done because we have to send out invitations to potential clients and give them time to arrive. You are free to explore Kirigakure until then. However, I would recommend using this time productively. With those words, everyone was dismissed, all except him, Akane, and Haku. Before they could go anywhere, Utakata, Mei, and Hiruzen Sarutobi walked up to them. Mei wore a bright smile as she looked at them. I've heard that you three dealt with a rather interesting foe on Death Island, she said. I would love to hear all about it. Ten-tailed wolf, since the matter that they were gonna speak to the Mizukage about was confidential, all of them, Akane, Haku, Naruto, Utakata, and the Sandaime Hokage, were directed toward the Mizukage's office. Naruto wondered if all Kage offices had been made by the same person. The scheme of this office was practically identical to the Hokage's office in Konoha. While the walls were a light blue, complemented by the dark blue carpet, the shape was very similar. Not only that, but it had the same bookshelves along one wall, there was a couch and coffee table in the middle, and the portraits of the previous Mizukage hung from the other wall. Just like the Hokage's office. It was kinda creepy. Since this was a matter of great importance, the group was sitting on the couches around the coffee table instead of before the Mizukage's desk. Mei had said it was important that they be comfortable while they spoke. Given the nature of the conversation, he could only agree with her. This was going to take a long time to explain anyway. Several cups of tea had been placed on the coffee table, though the only one drinking right now was Haku. Unlike Akane and Naruto, who were telling their story, and Mei and Sarutobi, who were intently listening to that story. He didn't have anything to do. Even Utakata was listening to the story again, though he wasn't really part of this conversation. Since Akane and Naruto were the most knowledgeable about this particular subject, they were the ones who spoke the most. Akane began by explaining to Mei what the bijou were, that they were divine beings sent from the heavens to protect the elemental nations from demon incursion. Of course, Mei already knew this. Saiken had told her through Utakata, so she was aware, but Akane was able to explain it more in depth because she wasn't sealed inside of someone. I see. The Yamata no Orochi, huh? Mei placed her fingers against her lips as she murmured to herself. Our nation actually has some legends concerning the Yamata no Orochi, though all of them claim that he is a god instead of a calamity like your story suggests. Not that I don't believe you. Given what we know, I'm more inclined to believe you than some musty old legends. Still, I can't deny that I'm shocked. It is pretty hard to accept. Akane nodded. However, everything I have said is the truth. And I have no reason to not believe you, Mei added. It's amazing how much history has been lost to us, the Sandaime said. He had his pipe in his mouth, but it wasn't lit, probably out of respect for the Mizukage. There is so much that we no longer know, knowledge that was lost to the ages. Had we known all along what the bijou were, this world would have turned out very differently. Indeed, Mei agreed. Thinking about how things could have been is kind of pointless, isn't it? Said Naruto. This is how things are. I think rather than regretting what we could have done if we had known all this from the beginning, we should be thinking about what we can do right now. You are correct, Naruto, the old Hokage said. We cannot allow ourselves to become caught up in what-ifs like that, not if we're to face the problem standing before us. Tell me more about this Mundus, Mei requested, leaning forward. Since Akane knew more than him, Naruto remained silent while she spoke. In fact, he listened as she talked about Mundus, even though most of it was rehashing the information she had given him and Haku in that cave. However, as she spoke, both the Hokage and Mizukichi paled. "I had no idea there was a creature like that," Mei muttered, aghast. Her face had broken out into a cold sweat. "So this Mundus is trying to break the barrier you Bijou put around the elemental nations." "That's right," Akane said. "And thanks to most of us being sealed, we haven't been able to maintain the barrier. It's slowly weakening, which is allowing more and more demons to escape. I also think this is why Mundus was able to manifest more easily. This is a dangerous situation." Mei bit her lip. "I had no idea there was trouble like this afoot." "Is there anything we can do?" asked the Hokage. "There's nothing that humans can really do to help repair the barrier." Akane shook her head. "Only us Bijou can do that. However, there are some things that you can do. Such as finding the people responsible for summoning demons to this land and disposing of them. There have been a number of cases where demons have been summoned to the elemental nations. We found evidence of it in Orochimaru's old lab on Demon Island, and someone had summoned Belphegor here during the Chunin exams. Every time a demon is summoned, the barrier weakens. The summoning creates a hole in the barrier through which the demons can enter. Right now, we need to work toward finding the people who've been doing this and getting rid of them so the barrier doesn't weaken anymore. I'll see what I can do about locating Orochimaru," the Sandaime said. "I'm sure he's responsible for summoning a number of demons. And I'll look into the genin participating in this exam," Mei added. "If there's someone who can summon demons, then that person probably isn't a genin anyway." Mei leaned back in her chair and fixed them with a look. "Now, then, I have one more question before we finish this meeting." "What is it?" asked Naruto. "Are you Erasure Uzumaki?" asked Mei with her eyes narrowed and a smile on her face. Naruto froze as shock raced through him. While a part of him had considered the possibility that Mei might somehow be able to figure out who he was, another part had dismissed the possibility as absurd. He might share the same family name with Erasure, but all similarities ended there. What's more, he didn't have his Hitokage no Yaiba sword out either, since it was very distinctive. He tried to think of some lie he could weave for her, but his hesitation was already all the confirmation she needed. The smile on her face was pretty much like she was telling him that his silence was telling. Giving her some lie right now would only make the situation worse. With a sigh, he said, "You got me. I am the Erasure you're talking about." Mei smiled. "I knew it. Erasure." The old Hokage frowned. "Naruto, what are you two talking about?" Naruto suddenly found himself at a loss for words, which was unusual for him, since he almost always had a comeback ready these days. As he was trying to think of something he could say, Mei Terumi smiled at Sarutobi. "Did this boy not tell you?" she asked, giggling. The Sandaime frowned. "Tell me what?" "After you turned down my request for aid during the Kirigakure Civil War, a young man calling himself Erasure came to my aid. Not only did he help me, but it is in many ways thanks to him that the Kirigakure Civil War ended as quickly as it did. This man was an Uzumaki who had the Hitokage no Yaiba. And he offered his services to me while I was still in Konoha. It was to his credit that Hiruzen Sarutobi did not react with shock. In fact, he slowly, calmly, and with a glare on his face looked at Naruto, who actually felt a small shudder course through him, digested this information at the speed of, well, a kage. "Naruto," Sarutobi said in a calm, collected, controlled voice. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Well. Naruto looked away. "I may have played a small part in the Kirigakure Civil War. I would not call defeating the 4th Mizukichi small," Mei said. "You defeated the 4th Mizukichi," the Sandaime suddenly shouted, finally losing his shit. I had help. Why did you not tell me about this?" I didn't think it was that important." "Not important. The look on the old Hokage's face made Naruto realize that he had probably said the wrong thing. After staring at him for a whole 30 seconds, the Sandaime suddenly gained an exhausted expression and slumped into his seat. Honestly, Naruto, you cause me so much trouble. I don't even know how you managed to participate when I know for a fact that you were in Konoha while the civil war was happening. While Mei Terumi raised an eyebrow at that, Naruto shrugged. You would be surprised by what I can accomplish using shadow clones and seals. The Sandaime wasn't known as the professor for nothing. Naruto saw the lightning jutsu racing through his head, allowing Sarutobi to reach the correct conclusion from that single sentence. You really are a surprising ninja, Naruto. I try my best. Naruto didn't really know if the old man was being complimentary or not, but he decided to take it as such. There were worse things he could be called. There is something else that I wish to discuss, Mei said finally. Two things, in fact. What is that? Asked the Hokage. First, I'm not sure it's fair that Naruto and Akane are taking part in this exam, Mei said. They're clearly leagues above any of the genin currently taking part. I'm not even sure we can call these two genin since one of them is a divine creature sent from heaven and the other is the hero of the Kirigakure Civil War. You make a fair point. The Sandaime nodded. However, the fact is they are still genin. The only way for them to be promoted would be a field promotion during times of war, or the Chunin exams. I cannot make exceptions for anyone on this. Besides that, Sunigakure has sent their Jinchuriki to participate. While unstable, we have determined that the one known as Gara no Sabaku is far more powerful than even most Jonin. That is true. Mei struggled to create a counter-argument, but Sarutobi had even more ammunition to fire at her. Besides, ninja are masters of deception, and this is a valid deception. By showing off Akane and Naruto's talent, we make many potential clients think things like, if even their genin are this powerful, then their jonin must be more amazing, which will help bring more business to the village. Mei's shoulders slumped. I see now why you are called the professor. I don't like it, but you've made a good point, and it's not as if I didn't do that myself. I just never expected to find anyone so powerful participating from another village. From her words, Naruto inferred that Akiha, Kiriha, and Matsu were probably well over Chunin level. They were likely as skilled as any Jonin, but Mei held them back for the purpose of making a big splash during the Chunin exam, which she planned to host in Kirigakure to give them the home team advantage. It was a sound plan. What's more, this would have allowed Mei to show not only how well Kirigakure was doing after being rebuilt, but showcasing the strength of those three would help bring in more clients. However, with him, Akane, and that Suna ninja, those plans might very well have gone down the drain. If it helps, I'll request that these two limit themselves during the tournament, the Sandaime said. They'll need to hold back anyway, since there's a high possibility of them killing someone on accident. I can't deny that, Naruto admitted. Haku sighed. At least you admitted it. What is the second thing you wanted to talk about? Asked Akane. Mei smiled as she pointed at Naruto. I want you, or rather, Erasure, to accompany me for the entire month. Ten-tailed wolf Naruto, now hinged to appear as Erasure, was accompanying Mei Terumi alongside Akane, who ground her teeth together. Of course, the reason she was grinding her teeth together was because Mei was hugging one of his arms. It seemed that while she had no problem when they were teasing other people, she didn't like it when someone they weren't teasing got this close to him. Naruto wasn't much of a fan of this situation either. They were in the company of the Mizukage because the Sandaime had ordered it. According to him, this was their fault for taking part in the Kirigakure Civil War. His words had run along the lines of, "This is your mess, so you have to take responsibility for it." Naruto couldn't deny them. Thus he had ended up doing as he was told and accompanying Mei, who led him through a marketplace. Accompanying Akage as she wandered through her village was quite interesting. Wherever they walked, people stopped and greeted Mei, who returned their greetings with bright smiles. Of course, after they greeted their Mizukage, they looked at him with befuddled expressions. They were probably wondering about his connection to the Mizukage. "I don't suppose you could let go of my arm," Naruto said. "Nope." Mei beamed at him. "This is your punishment for deceiving me." "It's not like I had a choice," Naruto groaned. "Besides, you benefited from my deception." "That is true." Agreeing with his words by nodding several times, Mei still refused to let go of his arm. "However, I dislike being lied to, and you, Arashi, or should I say Naruto, most definitely lied to me. All this time I was under the impression that you were a powerful Ronin who just happened to be in Konoha when I was requesting aid. Now I find out that you're a genin under Konoha. I am most cross about that." Naruto shrugged. "That's not something I can help." "Perhaps not, but you can make up for it. I suppose. Though I would still appreciate it if you let go. My mate doesn't seem to like you hugging me like this." "Mate?" Mei looked back at Akane, who walked several meters behind them. She blinked several times upon noticing the vitriol in the other redhead's eyes. "You and the Kyubi are mates?" "Yes." "What is that?" "Think of it like a marriage." Mei bit her lower lip. "So you are already taken." "That is unfortunate, but I suppose that is how the cookie crumbles." "Do not worry. I am not the kind of woman who would attempt to steal a man from another woman, and I do not think I could in this case. However, I am still going to have my comeuppance, so you'll just have to endure this for now." Naruto sighed, but he guessed this was sort of his fault to begin with. He had fought during the Kirigakure Civil War under an assumed name. While it was true that he had helped Mei win against the fourth Mizukage, it was also true that he deceived her, and it was true that he hadn't helped her out of the kindness of his own heart. He had merely used the war to gain experience in combat. It wasn't long before they left the marketplace. Having been there for more than a week now, Naruto vaguely recognized the area they were walking through, though it was still hard to see because of the mist. There weren't any buildings in this area, but there were a number of trees. These trees differed from the ones in Konoha. They were thicker, plumper. Naruto wondered if they had absorbed the moisture from the mist to gain that fatness. "Are we heading to a training ground?" asked Naruto. "We are indeed," Mei answered. "We are heading to my personal training ground." Mei Terumi's personal training ground was located far away from the rest of Kirigakure, on an island located in the center of a large salt lake. It was mostly flat, with no hills, no foliage, and nothing to really hide behind. A barrier also surrounded it. Naruto couldn't tell what kind of barrier it was, but he suspected that the purpose was to keep people from spying on Mei's training. It was likely being monitored by a number of ninja even as they stood on opposite ends of the training ground. Akane was standing between them. Mei had asked her to be the referee. "So, you want me to spar with you?" asked Naruto. Mei nodded. "Yes, from now until it's time for the tournament to begin, you and I are going to spar here every morning, and in the evenings, you will accompany me around the village. Is that a problem?" Naruto didn't want to say it wasn't a problem, but that was mostly for Akane's benefit. He could tell from how red her face was and the way her eyes were narrowed that she wasn't pleased. Given that he and Akane were a lot more powerful than her, Naruto was sure he could have gotten away with denying her. However, if he did that it could jeopardize the alliance between Kirigakure and Konohagakure. In the end, Naruto decided that it would be better to get this over with. "It's not a problem." Naruto slid into a basic combat stance. "However, don't expect me to go easy on you." Smiling benignly, Mei also adopted a combat stance. "Then I suggest you take out your sword. That is the Uzumaki clan's greatest power besides sealing, isn't it? I'll be insulted if you don't use it against me." Naruto sighed, but he summoned his sword as requested. His blade was called Haikejukami, meaning Wolf of Light and Shadow. It was a dado, a single-edged, curved long sword with a 27-inch blade. The shinogi was near the center of the blade and had a narrow profile, while the point was shaped into the Kisaki style, giving it a curved profile. The blade itself was dark. However, the edge of the blade was a bright silver. Near the blade's tsuba was a depiction of a howling wolf. "Are the two of you ready?" Akane asked. He and Mei nodded. Akane raised her hand into the air, and then brought it down. Then, fight! Mei didn't waste time. From the moment the fight had started, she'd begun flying through hand seals. Her fingers were a blur. Naruto remembered how good she had been during the Civil War, and it looked like time and peace hadn't dulled her speed. Actually, it looked like she was even faster than before. Lava release, rapid-fire lava bullets. Mei spat out several globs of red-hot lava, about 6 in less than 0.03 seconds. Each lava sphere was about the size of his head. All of them were aimed at him. Deciding not to use a jutsu just yet, Naruto slid his feet wide, adopting a traditional Uzumaki sword stance. As the lava jutsu reached him, he swung his blade. A vertical slash cut through one ball of lava. A horizontal attack sliced through another. He spun on the balls of his feet and avoided the next attack, then swung from his right hip to his left shoulder, severing the next sphere with a diagonal slash. Even though he was unharmed from the initial attack, the heat from Mei's jutsu had singed his arm hairs. She must have compressed that lava to an incredible density. That kind of heat would have overwhelmed most shinobi. Lava release, melting apparition jutsu. By the time he had defeated her first technique, Mei had already flowed through the hand seals required for her second one. After sucking in a deep breath, she spat out a powerful acidic fluid that resembled lava, which looked almost like a massive tidal wave that rose high above Naruto's head. Uzumaki hidden technique, light release, cutting light. The edge of Naruto's blade glowed brightly as he released the weapon from its sheath and swung. His attack sliced straight through Mei's wave of acidic fluids. Several splashes struck Naruto's arms, creating an intense, stinging pain, but his regeneration kicked in and healed them barely a second after he received them. Earth release, swamp of the underworld. The surface beneath Naruto's feet suddenly transformed into mud, forcing Naruto to channel chakra into his feet, lest he be sucked into the thick quagmire, which was infused with a good deal of chakra. During that time, Mei went through another set of hand seals. Water release, water dragon bullet. Several water bullets flew at Naruto, who leapt into the air. As he did that, Mei went through even more hand seals. Boil release, skilled mist jutsu. As Mei released a thick cloud of mist that engulfed the entire area, and then began expanding to engulf him, Naruto narrowed his eyes. I see what she's doing. By releasing jutsu after jutsu, she's hoping to keep me too occupied to retaliate against her. What's more, each of these techniques was designed to hem me in, forcing me to fight on her terms and using that advantage to create a situation where I cannot escape from her technique. Heh. That's a Kage for you. Naruto doubted that Mei had created this mist with the intention of killing him, so the pH levels were probably low. He suspected they might cause a serious rash, though. Since he had no intention of letting himself be caught in such a technique, he channeled wind chakra into his sword and swung down. A powerful gust of wind blew the mist away. This was not a technique, merely an application of wind chakra. Naruto thought it was better to use pure nature manipulation than actual jutsu, which were limited by hand seals and how those seals molded chakra in the body. While they were certainly easier to use, he preferred this more freeform style of ninjutsu. With the mist now gone, Naruto used another Uzumaki technique. Uzumaki hidden technique, dark release, shadow slip. Shadow slip was a shadow technique similar to the ones used by Shikamaru's family. The shadow slip was called such because it was a basic shadow walking technique. It allowed him to slip inside one shadow and move to another. One could almost call it a transportation technique, though it was limited in that he could only move between shadows that were connected. Having leapt immediately above Mei, his shadow was connected to hers, and he used that fact to move inside of his shadow and slip out of hers. Because the shadow slip allowed him to move undetected, Mei didn't even realize he was behind her until his dado was poking her back. "Is that your sword, or are you just happy to see me?" asked Mei. Naruto smiled at the joke but didn't take the bait. "I think this battle is mine." "I suppose it is." With the match now at an end, Akane raised her hand. "This match is concluded. Victory goes to Naruto." "Serves you right." Mei giggled. "Your mate doesn't like me very much." "Not much I can do about that." "I suppose not." Mei paused. "You've improved a lot." "So have you. Your hand-sealing speed has gotten even faster." "Not fast enough, it seems." Mei sighed. "With what I learned during that meeting, I believe I need to become much stronger." "You will help me, right?" So that was the reason she requested his presence. Naruto was a ninja on par with, or perhaps stronger than, most Kage. He had experience thanks to his time in Kirigakure, power thanks to no longer being human, and the unique skill set granted to him by his Hitokage no Yaiba. As a powerful ninja with a lot of techniques and combat experience, someone like Mei, who had no equal in her village, could benefit a lot from sparring with him daily. "That is what we have agreed upon, isn't it?" "Yes," Mei said, her lips curving into a delightful smile that made Akane grind her teeth. "Yes, it is." Ten-tailed wolf. The next several weeks involved Naruto waking up every morning, meeting up with Mei, sparring, and then spending the day with her. It was annoying. Akane hated it, but she also knew that he kind of had to. Well, he didn't have to. He could have said no, but this was an order from his Hokage, and while the laws of men didn't really apply to her, they still applied to him. She understood that, but it didn't mean she had to like it. At least Naruto had set boundaries, having stated to Mei, in no uncertain terms, that if she tried to get too flirty with him, he would stop helping her. She had accepted his proposal, or so Naruto had said. Akane didn't trust her. That was why she was following them as they went shopping. It was early afternoon, or at least she thought it was, but it was hard to tell without being able to see the sun. How the people of Kirigakure know, the whole land of water dealt with all this mist was beyond her. What did Saiken even see in this place? There were quite a few people already up and about. The scent of bread wafted through the air as bakers set out their displays of freshly baked goods. Stall owners were beginning to sell their wares. There was already a sizable crowd, with children running through the streets, people shopping, and ninja from other villages mixing into the crowd. Mei and Naruto were among that crowd, though Naruto was disguised as Arashi walking through the street as they talked about something. Perhaps it was just her imagination, but the smile on Mei's face seemed way too happy to Akane. It was the kind of smile that a girl wore when she was with her crush. Naruto wore his usual grin. She doubted he was oblivious of Mei's feelings, but he was carefully ignoring them. That was good. However, I can't believe that Hussey is using her position as Mizukage to try and seduce my Naruto. Akane was standing around the corner of a bakery, and she could tell it was a bakery because of the scent of freshly baked bread. The sign above the door helped too. She had placed her hands on the wall, a brick wall, which was slowly cracking as she dug her fingers into it. Behind her, Haku and Enko sighed. "Why am I here again?" asked Haku. "I feel like I should be the one asking that," Enko muttered. "Seriously, I was supposed to go and have a drink with Kurenai, but instead I'm following the brat while he's on a date with the Mizukage." She paused long enough to crunch up her face. "Just how did that happen anyway?" "How it happened doesn't matter," Akane said as Naruto and Mei wandered into a cafe. "Come on, you two. Follow me." Akane didn't give either of them a chance to protest as she created two chakra tails that latched onto their wrists and dragged them behind her. She ignored their protests as she walked up to a place across the street and looked inside of the cafe. It looked like they were buying danishes to eat. She frowned. Her mate wasn't a fan of danishes. Why was Naruto indulging that woman? She didn't think Naruto would ever betray her. The very thought was absurd. However, he wasn't really the type to indulge a woman, certainly not one whose name wasn't Akane, either. Was it because Mei was the Mizukichi? Because she was a redhead? Either way, Akane was determined to watch those two, to make sure that wench didn't try anything. The only time Naruto can get close to another woman is when he and I are bullying them. It wasn't long after entering that the two left the store and continued on. They were speaking about something as they left, but Akane couldn't hear what was being said. It wasn't that they were too far away. There were just too many blasted people. All those other conversations garbled out what Naruto and Mei were talking about. It doesn't look like they're talking about anything in particular. Akane narrowed her eyes. But I still need to hear what they're saying. She tried to get closer, but it wasn't like she could get too close. Naruto was probably already aware that he was being followed. However, she was being careful to keep her chakra signature smothered. Akane didn't want anyone to find out that she was following them. Mei was still the Mizukichi. "What are you three doing?" someone behind them asked. Akane turned around to find Utakata standing behind them. She had been so focused on watching Naruto and Mei that she hadn't felt Utakata and Saiken's presence behind her. Unlike Akane, who didn't respond with surprise, Enko and Haku squawked at the sudden intrusion. "What are you doing here?" Akane asked. "I could ask the same of you." Utakata looked past Akane's shoulder, no doubt staring at Naruto and Mei. "But I suppose I could understand why you'd want to tail those two. Honestly, I'm not exactly sure why Mei wants to spend so much time with that boy, regardless of who he is or what he's accomplished. And why wouldn't she want to spend time with him?" Akane asked. "Naruto is amazing. Any woman would be lucky to spend even a second with him." Akane wasn't about to let this man downgrade Naruto's worth, even if she didn't like how Mei was spending more time with Naruto than she was. "Right," Utakata said. "Anyway, what are you doing here?" "Myself and several others are watching the Mizukichi, of course," Utakata said. "With so many ninja from other villages present, we're being extra tight with security. Technically, we shouldn't even be letting the Mizukichi outside during this time, but, well, she wasn't having any of it." Akane snorted. "I can see that. You know," Enko began, "while you two were talking, Naruto and the Mizukichi left." "What?" Akane and Utakata shouted at the same time. Ten-tailed wolf Naruto and Mei walked around a street corner and continued walking, making small talk, though really, all he wanted to do was find Akane and make love to her. It felt like it had been forever since they'd had sex. Surely, she was feeling deprived as well. "You know that we are being followed, yes?" inquired Mei. "Of course." Naruto sighed. "Akane and the others might think they are being sneaky, but it's obvious even without being able to sense their chakra that they are following us. It's like they've completely forgotten stealth." From the moment he had left to spar with Mei, Akane had been following him. Which didn't surprise him, really. He had expected something like this. However, she was normally more stealthy than this. Her emotions were getting the better of her. "She seems awfully jealous," that girl, Mei mused, the curvature of her lips denoting amusement. To think one of the 9 bijou would become jealous of a human woman. He. How amusing. "I would be careful about finding amusement in that," Naruto warned. "Akane has been known to kill people for less." "Humph. I do not believe Akane is the sort of woman who'd kill a powerful leader in a fit of jealous rage." "Perhaps not. I was just warning you." They continued wandering, sampling the wares and eating some snacks. Mei told Naruto stories about the places they went. Behind them, tailing after them with the obvious intent of spying on them, was none other than Akane. She wasn't alone. Haku, Enko, and even Yudakata were now with her. While wandering from stall to stall and store to store, Naruto tried to figure out what Mei wanted from him outside of sparring. He understood why she might want to spar with him. She was a Kage. More than that, she was powerful. There were no ninja within Kirigakure who had the same power as her, which meant she could never grow stronger, since that would require fighting against someone stronger than she was. That much he understood. What he didn't understand was why she was taking him out on dates. "Are you confused?" Mei asked, grinning at him. She must have noticed his feelings on the matter. "I am." "Why are you doing this?" "It's just a bit of fun." They wandered up to a stall that sold jewelry, behind which an older woman stood, greeting her Mizukichi with a smile. She did the same to him, but she seemed more curious than happy. More than likely, she was wondering what the Mizukichi was doing with some strange man she'd never met. As she looked through the jewels, many of which were blue, she continued speaking. "Being the Mizukichi is a great source of pride, and I love how it allows me to help my village grow and prosper." She handed him a necklace and turned around, obviously asking him to help her put it on. He sighed and did as she asked while she continued talking. "But it is also difficult being the Mizukichi. Everyone in the village speaks to me with reverence and respect, but no one speaks to me familiarly, not even Ao, and you know how he is." "I do. I'd like to be normal for a while." Mei continued after Naruto finished attaching the necklace. She looked down and touched the pendant. "I want to go on dates, flirt, and pretend for just a few days that I'm a regular woman." She looked up and smiled at him from beneath her bangs. "How does it look?" The pendant was a blue fishtail. The oceanic color was reminiscent to the waters that surrounded Kirigakure. It hung between her breasts, resting on her blue kimono. "If you wanted to be a normal woman, I think you should have gone with someone who could actually treat you like a woman." Naruto clicked his tongue as he studied the pendant. "And I think you would look better with a green pendant to match your eyes. Your outfit already has a lot of blue." "I suppose you are right," Mei said after a moment. With a sigh, she removed the pendant and put it back on the display. Naruto could not tell if she was saying he was right about the pendant, or that he was right about how she should have chosen to be with someone who could treat her like a woman. Ten-tailed wolf Jiraiya sat at the bar in a slump. He poured himself some sake, took a big swig, and then poured himself some more sake. An ironic thought about to him, that she was drinking like Tsunade drank. However, he really couldn't find it in himself to feel amused. He had been hoping to train Naruto, or at least spar with him to give him a powerful opponent, but that hope had been dashed when Sarutobi had informed him that Naruto was spending the month with Mei Terumi, the Mizukichi. On the one hand, Jiraiya couldn't have been more proud. Mei Terumi was smoking hot, a true babe among babes, and she was a hot-blooded redhead to boot. On the other hand, he felt kinda gypped. She was taking away the time that he had wanted to spend with his godson. Really, his feelings on the matter were so mixed that he didn't know whether to feel pride or depression. "Jiraiya," the familiar voice of Tsunade called out his name. He looked up to find the woman in question staring down at him, hands on her hips and a single eyebrow raised. "What the hell are you looking so mopey for?" "No reason." Jiraiya shoved aside his sadness, masking it with a grin as he called a waiter over and ordered another sake. Raising the bottle he currently had, which was half full, he asked, "Care to join me?" "So long as you're paying," Tsunade said with a shrug. She slid into the booth as a waiter came by and set a saucer in front of her. He poured Tsunade a drink, then watched as she gulped it all down in a single swig. After shaking his head, he noticed that something was missing, or rather, someone was missing. Two someones if he counted the pig. "Where are Shizun and your, pet?" "I told her to have fun exploring the village." Tsunade shrugged as Jiraiya poured her another drink. This is her first time in another nation, you know. I thought it would be a good experience. Besides, I'm not planning to do any gambling until the Chunin exam. Oh, really? Jiraiya perked up. Does that mean you already know who you're betting on? Maybe, Tsunade said. Is it Naruto? Che. Scoffing, Tsunade downed another glass of sake, and then slammed it on the table. There's no way in hell I would bet on that brat. That smug. Little bastard. I'd never hear the end of it if I bet on him. Jiraiya snorted quietly as he sipped his sake, trying not to let Tsunade know how amused he was by her attitude. He still had no idea how Naruto and Tsunade had become acquainted. She hadn't told him that story, and whenever he brought it up, she would get angry at him. However, it must have been an amusing tale. Maybe he should see if Shizun would be willing to tell it to him. Ten-tailed wolf. The days passed as uneventfully as could be. Naruto continued to train with Mei Terumi, but after that day where he told her that if she wanted to feel like a woman, she should find someone else, they had stopped going out after their spars. That said, she did make him lunch several times. The woman was a surprisingly good cook. Akane had not spoken to him for a few nights because of what happened with Mei, but she settled down and they began going out together. There wasn't much they could do, but it was nice traveling around an unfamiliar village, though when they tried to go to a love hotel, they were kicked out. Apparently, ninja from another village were only allowed to stay at designated hotels. His mate had not liked that. Since he was training with Mei, Akane trained Enko and Haku. Naruto had no idea what that training entailed, but whenever he met up at the hotel after his sparring sessions, both ninja would be crouched on the ground and mumbling incoherent nonsense while they rocked back and forth on their heels. He thought it would be better not to ask. Naruto continued to spar, continued to go out with Akane, and didn't have any real problems to speak of, not even a run-in with the other genin outside of a few chance meetings with his fellow rookies. Before he knew it, the day of the Chunin exam's final stage had arrived. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like, share and subscribe. This is Raven Sage signing off.